Okay, now we have all the database configurations and all the server setup. So now it's time to actually configure the our deployment, right? For that one, so I'll go to some of the configuration right now. Now first we have cluster discovery URL. This is the URL this is the Mongo URL we are trying to uh, use for the cluster, backend for the cluster. And then we need to have a Mongo URL. So this is the Mongo URL that we have shown in the previous video. And so now we need to have something called Mongo upload URL. So upload URL is the way how Meteor used to get real-time data changes. So we can generate that Mongo upload URL using the Mongo URL. So you can first copy the Mongo upload the Mongo URL as the Mongo upload URL, and then you need to give the username and password for the actual the user that you created as an upload user. So we have created the user as upload, and password is also the password, so we can use that one, this one. And then we need to give the database name as local, right? And then we need to do simple setup. We need to say put ampersand and say auth source, right? And then we need to give the auth source as our database that we have created here, right? So this should be our Mongo upload URL, and that's it. And then we have 5 servers. So we have 2 servers from NY3 data center, and we have 3 servers from NY2 data centers. So now everything is ready, so let's configure our deployment. So for that one, so this is our directory architecture, directory setup. We have 2 servers, 2 our applications here, web and search. And then we have the main config directory with the public key and private key. Okay, and then I have the settings file. This is just a markdown file, and this is just a file for my information for me. And then I try to create two directories for the, so we create one directory for the web service, and we create another directory for the search service. So I put Meteor Up configuration in these 2 folders, these 2 directories. So let's do that. First I need to go to that directory using the terminal. So let's go for the web directory first, and then I can create I can invoke a command called map init, and it will generate the default configuration for the Meteor Up. And let's look at that configuration. All right, this one. So it has two files called map.json and settings.json. So settings.json is how you pass in settings to your application. Right now we are not using something related to this one, so we can ignore this file, and we can use the map.json for the actually configure our actual deployment setup. So let's try to edit that one. First let's enter servers. So right, let's open our setting our file as well. All right, so we can give the servers here. So we are using this server for the web, right? And we use another 2 servers for the web from NY2 data centers. So let's select the first one. Okay, I give the host name as this one, and then I give the username is root. That's fine. So I'm not using a password, I'm using the SSL based authentication. Then I can comment this one. I can give the location of the private key. So the private key is the do in our setup. So I can do something like this. So it's available on the previous directory. So I can give the location like this. So I'm using 3 servers here. So I can copy this setup, and then let's get the other 2 servers. So from the NY2 data centers, this is the first one from the NY2, and this is the other one from the NY2. Okay, Now everything is ready. So then I need to do some other configuration. I don't need to set up MongoDB, so I just say it's false. Alright, I need to set up node, yeah, 33, that's fine. I need to set up phantom.js, okay, which is also fine. And I need to give the name as Meteor, okay, that's fine. Then I need to give the location of the application. This is very important. This is the directory of our Meteor application on our local machine. So I can give it something like this. So it's available on this something like this. So let's see, is that correct? Okay, it's inside the config. Right, that's correct. So this is our local directory of our application. That means our service, web service. Right, then they need to configure some environment variable. So first, root URL. Root URL is the domain of our application. So right now we just keep this at this one. So at the end of this lesson, I'll show you how to configure this one. So we just leave it like this for now. And then we need to give the Mongo URL. So let's copy these things. Need to give the Mongo URL like this. Okay, this is my Mongo URL. Okay, then I need to give the same like for the Mongo Up URL as well. Okay, let's do that. Right, this is my Mongo Up URL. Right, then I need to give the cluster configurations as well. For that one, I can give this is my cluster discovery URL. I need to give it as environment variable. Yeah. Okay, right. This is my cluster discovery URL. Right. Then I need to give my cluster service. I need to specify the service name for the cluster. So that means I need to export this environment variable cluster underscore service. So which is web for this service. And then we need to, okay, that is for the, yeah, that is for the cluster swap. Right. And then I need to, so in the tutorial, in the lesson I have mentioned that we have seen two balances for this server setup. The balancer is the server that handle the incoming traffic from the users. So that means those are the two servers exposed to the public. So let's give the balances. So balances, we can also configure balances using environment variables. So there's a special environment called cluster balancer underscore URL. So we can expose that URL, and we can expose the URL for using this environment variable, and so then it acts as the balancer. So we can use the environmental option, env option of the individual servers to specify this balancer. Right, this is my cluster balancer URL. So now I can give the URL for that one. I think we are going to change the URL in the next section. Right now we use this IP address for this one. Just like that, I need to give it to the other servers. Right. Okay, this one. Right. So now we have a balancer in the NY3 data center and NY2 data center, and these are other service, which is just the web service. It is not a balancer, so that's fine. All right, now we have everything set up. So now we are ready to go, and now we need to consider one other thing as well. So now we are using the search service as well. So in here we need to configure the search service as well. All right. In order to do that, so we need to allow our cluster to export the search service to the public. So to that, we need to configure that using the environment variable. So we need to give something like this cluster. Actually, I'm not remember the actual parameter, so let's look at the documentation. For that, I can go to the Meteor Hacks cluster, right, documentation, and this is its URL, like, yeah. All right, I think it's not here. Right, I think it should be, yeah, it should be something like this. It should be cluster public services. Right, this is the URL, the cluster public services. Actually, it's in the my dev run.sh file, so I can get that one in the main app. Yes, right, this one. Okay, actually I made it correct. That's correct. And I need to give the search service is a public service. That means public users can access this service through the balances. Right, so now everything is ready, so we can deploy right now. But we need to keep in mind one more thing. So now when we are using the cluster, the cluster to configure and manage our servers, we need to expose something called cluster endpoint URL, something like this. So each and every server in our deployment setup, we need to have a cluster endpoint URL. The cluster endpoint URL is a URL which can be accessed inside the cluster. So it could be a public or private URL, it doesn't matter. So anyone in the cluster can access this server using this IP address. That's fine. So it could be in your something like virtual private network or something internally through the data center. That's fine. But all the instances, all the servers in your cluster need to access to this URL, can access this server using this URL. But the thing is, Meteor Up will automatically add this cluster endpoint URL to this server automatically. But if you are using some other way to deploy your server, and then you need to expose this URL as well. Right, so now we are ready. So this is all we need to configure in our Meteor Up configurations. We have databases, we have cluster setup, and we have balancers set up here. So that's it. I'm not going to do the same for the search configuration as well. So I'll ask you to do that one. So this is the same thing, and you don't need to expose balances. You just need to expose the environment variable, something like this only. Right? That's it.